Okay. Well, before we get into anything, this probably already looks a little one-sided. You have the movie whose remake I reviewed last week, and I continually praised this movie while bashing its remake, and the movie it's up against has the library stickers on it. So, they don't have like the location or anything, right?
Nope. No, it just says
it's right here in plain as day on the back, but I don't want people, finding out where we are and stabbing me or anything. So,
smart move.
We are going with the family lives in house. They think the house is haunted, when in actuality it's more about one of the children and how they are. I'm really, really simplifying it. You get how these two go together, right? Of course you do. Okay, let's start. We're going to start with Poltergeist, I think. Poltergeist is obviously known for being basically Steven Spielberg's horror movie. You can call Jaws a horror movie, but I don't. I think it's more like a thriller. But this is basically like a pure horror movie, basically by Spielberg. It's got Tobe Hooper's name on it. Tobe Hooper is the credited director. But basically, to my understanding, it was more like Spielberg wanted a horror consultant. And obviously Tobe Hooper had done Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So Spielberg was like, okay, we'll hire that guy. And that's how this movie happened. And you can really tell a lot. One of the opening credit shots of this movie is a group of kids riding on bikes through their neighborhood.
It opened the week before E.T. too.
Yeah, I knew they came out real close. I wasn't sure. And naturally, this was like one of the ultimate haunted house movies. It came out in '82. We were just talking about it coming out with E.T. I don't know why I had to think about that, because I know E.T. absolutely is '82. So anyway, but unlike a lot of movies where you kind of feel, I don't think they clashed. I think it's just Spielberg had a lot of control and basically directed like 80 to 90% of it. Every like on-set story you hear involves Spielberg in one way or another, and we'll get into more of those. But the thing about this movie was how it kind of took people by storm with not only with how freaky it is, but the effects also were a big deal then. What's great about Poltergeist is when you watch it, how the way the story is set up, it gives the time for the effects that they have brought to it to slowly build and get bigger and bigger as the movie calls for them. I've always liked how that was done. And we have one great thing that they did was we actually spend a lot of time getting to know the family while throwing those things in there. They kind of keep throwing in tiny clues that just kind of go into the back of your head and stay there until they become really important. Because we have the fun quirky stuff like the neighbor next door, and they both have the remotes are on the same line and they're fighting over whether it's Mr. Rogers or a football game. You have the funny beer can guy who kind of introduces us to the house we follow him in, and it's his journey through the house. We're introduced to everybody we need to know. And while they're really, really creating great characters here, like we know most, like I said before, the teenage daughter always kind of gets the shit end of the stick in this story, but we really get to know about everybody else in the family, which really, really works for this because there's actually this is one of those movies where an emotional connection to the people involved is very, very important, and how you're going to be affected by the crazy shit that goes down later. And after we see that the kids are actually relatively likable, like Heather O'Rourke in this movie is just like, so easy to just, everything she does is like the most adorable thing ever, and you don't want anything bad to happen to her. Naturally, she's the one that gets pulled inside the TV. But, and then we have the brother who is afraid of many, many things, most of which are in his bedroom. Pretty much everything in his bedroom that is not Star Wars related is something that he is afraid of. Mainly the clown sitting on the chair and the tree right outside the window. And those things are just in there, and you think they just kind of have, and just the way they're able to handle that and have it so progressively just, these are, because you know at the beginning they're just things that are, it's that feeling where a harmless thing becomes scary at night. That whole way of thinking that every human being has. And I still have never quite figured out why he has that clown doll to begin with, and why it's not like in a closet or something. It's actually sitting on the chair staring at him while he sleeps. I don't know. Do you think he'd move it during the day or something? But it just I guess whatever. You look like you were going to say something.
It's like when you're not a Simpsons fan, but I do have to bring this up. It's like the Simpsons episode where Homer creates the bedroom for Bart when he is born, and all of a sudden he has these giant, like, creepy-looking clown on his bed, and he keeps saying, "Can't sleep, clown will eat me, can't sleep, clown will eat me." So it's kind of like that.
And then once that's established, we get to know the parents a little better, and you think they're just going to be like, the cliche married couple, and eventually horror finds them, and, they're scared, and then they just play it out. But they're played so likable, and Craig T. Nelson and JoBeth Williams are so good in this. JoBeth Williams has a couple of amazing scenes, but we'll get to those. I love the fact that they're stoners. They're responsible parents that have 3 children in the house, but when they go to bed at night, they get fucking stoned, and there's nothing wrong about it. It's just what they do. And they, and even stoned, he still, is able to be, parental and stuff. He goes in, and there's the nice scene where he convinces, obviously, the kid is afraid of thunderstorms as well, and there's the really nice scene between them where he talks about, counting in between lightning and thunder, and if it grows each time, then the storm's farther away and you're safe. He was able to do that while stoned. This is definitely Father of the Year material. And just the fact that he's played by Craig T. Nelson helps.
Like Jock says, he's Coach. Come on.
Yeah.
Mr. Incredible.
He killed Hooch though. That can't be forgiven, even if he is Mr. Incredible.
He's Mr. Incredible. That's enough for me.
I know, but anyway.
Killed Jason
so,
too.
And there's the really funny scene where that comes back later, where we don't see it happen, but after shit starts to go down and the spirits start to, start moving shit, they go over to the neighbor's house, and it's this hilarious scene where they're trying to fight off mosquitoes, and they're trying to explain to the neighbor, is there something going on in your house by any chance that's a little out of the ordinary? And you can tell they got stoned before they came over. Because they're really paranoid of the mosquitoes, and they can't stop laughing, and those are littered through it as well. So that they're able to balance that with the horror, because the horror stuff gets really out of control in this. But they found such a perfect stride for all of this stuff to take. It's amazing how well they constructed it. And as far as those light moments, I love how they don't treat it like horror right away. That's a really, really great way to do it. Because you have, like I said, it really slowly starts to happen. There's the scene at the breakfast table where the kid's glass of milk spontaneously breaks itself, and then the silverware bends by itself. But then it gets to the point to where a scene that has been taken inspiration from so much. The chairs keep pulling themselves out, and then eventually just stack themselves on the table in that one shot where it doesn't cut. And instead of freaking out, they think it's great. JoBeth Williams' character thinks it's like the greatest thing on earth, and she gets a huge kick out of it. How she can make the chair and the girl slide across the floor if she puts it in just the right spot. I love that that's the approach they took to it, and it totally fits with their character too. They're fucking stoners. Of course they would think that way. But then, as this movie goes, this movie reaches insanity that is really impressive, especially for the time that it came out. that this movie came out in 1982, and we are so bombarded with supernatural horror movies now that this movie still stands as something this great and manages to do the things that it does still really, really effectively. Is fantastic. And like I said, even after things get really, really out of control, they still throw those moments in there. I always love the first time we meet Beatrice Straight's character when she comes to the house, and they still kind of treat like it's still all the scary shit has gone down. Like Carol Ann's already been taken, and things are getting really serious. But there's still those moments for those light scenes, like when they have the whole room where they just say, you know, like that's just a room we don't go in anymore. That's just the end of that. And they go in there, and it's treated like it's this crazy shit is happening. You have the compass with the needle on the end that's like playing the record and like coming at them, and there's like Hulk on a horse, and and in the very next scene, she's like shaken to the core, despite the fact that she's supposedly, you know, seen all kinds of shit go down, and it's just so casual to them. Like they just kind of watch as the coffee pot slides across the table and the lights flicker on, and she's just casual about, yeah, they come in pairs, it'll do it again soon. And they just live with it. There is a lot of concern about why they didn't move out, but it's a haunted house movie. You just can't ask them to move out. That's just not the way great haunted house movies work. Okay, so Insidious goes into that, but we will get to Insidious soon enough. Now, talking about great scenes here. There's a scene that Joe Beth Williams really, really sells, and it's the best scene of the movie. And in any other movie, it could seem really, really cheesy. And in a sense, it's probably supposed to be a little cheesy, given the movie's tone, but they somehow made it this... Obviously, we have Zelda Rubinstein's character comes into it, who is this fantastic character. Like I said in the review for the remake, they had to completely redo her and make the Jared Harris character for the new one, because you just can't redo this character without her. This character is this once in a lifetime thing, ignoring, 2 and 3, obviously. The 2 sequels. She's really fantastic in this. She actually got a Razzie nomination for 2. But then again, the Razzies don't mean
anything.
Jack shit, yeah. This was only 2 years after they gave Stanley Kubrick a Razzie nomination for The Shining. They don't mean shit. And now all they want to do is pick on Adam Sandler. Not that he doesn't deserve it. I'm just saying they're just ignore that. Ignore that completely.
Like shooting fish in the barrel.
So anyway, we have this scene where the stuff is really starting to go down, and then Joe Beth Williams can feel Carol Ann move through her, and Joe Beth Williams gives this beautiful performance in this really magnificent scene. And you have that, and you have the score going on and her performance, and the scene where she's just, like saying, "Oh my God, I felt her pass through me." It's a really, really powerful scene. Like I said, there's almost kind of an underlying cheesiness to it, but it's still, even with that, it's a really, really great scene. Like I said, probably the best in the movie. And then, as it goes, it just gets more and more fucking wild and insane. The dude who hallucinates pulling his own face off in the mirror. It's worth noting that this movie was rated R initially, and Spielberg talked the MPAA out of it. So the movie, as you see it now, did have an R rating when it was first brought to the MPAA. But Spielberg used his powers and talked them down. And this is hardcore for today. It really is. And that's really, really saying something for 1982. Like, that's really impressive. Like, this movie is a classic, and everybody knows it. It's notorious. But I still don't think that it's... Like, it gets brought up, but nobody really brings up just how, great it is. Like, I had almost forgotten it until I saw it a couple more times over time. But this movie really has something special going for it. And that also has a lot to do with this. Like I said, the performances really go into it. I know it has that. I guess we can't talk about this without talking about the whole curse thing about how like 4 months after it was released, Dominic Dunn, who played the older sister, who was I think she was Griffin Dunn's sister, was killed by her boyfriend, and then shortly during the making of the third movie, Heather O'Rourke got sick, and we lost her too, and people tried to make it this, like with the whole Exorcist curse thing. They tried
True Hollywood story. I remember seeing that.
That whole thing's kind of far-fetched, but it is what it is, I guess. You gotta get legends behind your horror movies to make them scarier, I guess. This movie does not need help with that. This movie's perfectly fine without urban legends and shit. And speaking of this, this sounds like something that maybe could have been an urban legend, but apparently it is absolutely true. I'm not sure how he pulled it off, but it's Spielberg, and I'll just take it at that. I assume he has the power of God, especially in the 80s. When he was really, really, he was really Spielberg at that time. The ending scene where they use real skeletons when all the bodies come back. After that really wicked twist, that's one of my favorite movie twists of all time. I love it. With the whole, everybody knows that there used to be a cemetery where the houses are, and it turns out that the cemetery is technically still there. I think that's a really fantastic twist. So yes, apparently Spielberg went out and they got actual real skeletons, and the scene where Joe F. Williams is submerged in water with them while they're all kind of on top of her, they totally did not tell her until after they filmed that scene.
Would you have? She never would have done the movie. Forget the scene, she would just drop the whole movie.
Yeah, but Spielberg was really, really passionate about the making of this movie, to my understanding. Like, even though Tobe Hooper's credited as the director, apparently Spielberg was always there. And there was a moment where Joe F. Williams didn't want to get in the water because of all the electronics around the set. So Spielberg got in the water with her and until she did the scene. And then there was the moment where I guess Heather O'Rourke was fine through the whole shooting except for the scene where she's being pulled off the bed. And she was freaking out, so Spielberg just held her and told her she didn't have to do the scene anymore. So he was in total control of this movie. But that's not to discredit Tobe Hooper for anything. I have heard also that he contributed more than he's given credit for. Like there's more Tobe Hooper in there than people under the impression of after hearing so many Spielberg stories. But regardless, they obviously made a magical team because this movie is insanely great for this genre. When you talk about this, I've noticed in passing time that horror is a genre where it's the absolute has both exact opposite sides of the spectrum. The worst horror movies are likely some of the worst movies that have ever been made in the history of movies. But if you get a horror movie that is this well made, it is like masterpiece material. Like if you know how to do horror like this, you really, really made something like otherworldly great. And in case you hadn't noticed, I have extreme admiration for this movie. I really, really do. The score too really, really stands out. It's kind of hard to describe. The score really works for us, and it does both. There's the score for the "She Passed Through Me" scene. That's this really, really beautiful piece that just makes this scene this really emotionally overwhelming moment. And then you have the score that's playing when the hand comes out of the TV, and it's this really eerie, like your hairs are jumping up and down on you, as opposed to just standing up. Oh, that works great. And I love how they consistently keep, they kind of somewhat keep the parents' love story in there. There's the whole family dynamic thing in this is strong. The scene where she has to go in and get Carol Ann out is a really fantastic scene. Which, once again, they throw just one comedic line in there that just really adds to the moment. And it doesn't... This whole big thrilling sequence is taking place, and this is where the big thing is. And they throw this one perfect line in there with, she says, Zelda Rubinstein's character says, I'm going in after her, and she says, no, I'm going to go. And she says, but you've never done this before. And she says, neither of you, and her delivery of, okay, you go. And the scene just goes from there. And it would seem cheesy in another movie, but the kiss between her and Craig T. Nelson right before she goes in, that's lit up by the giant light in the closet, it's just really, really... This whole movie is just really great movie making. It really is. And I've always loved the false ending. Because after Caroline is rescued and we've had that really big moment, and we see the face of the beast come out when Craig T. Nelson pulls him out, you think the movie cannot get bigger than this. And then we have this house is clean and everything ends. And then the clown happens, and then the scene where... I praised the scene in The Nightmare on Elm Street when Tina's getting thrown around on the walls and the ceiling. It was actually done 2 years prior in this, which I think it's probably more famous for. And then all the way up to the house imploding. It manages to somehow top what you thought was the ending. And that's the way to do it. Like, if you're going to do a false ending... You gotta be prepared to top that motherfucker. And this movie does that, and I cannot say enough good things about it. Everything about this movie is just the perfect recipe, and everything hits just right. And that's why it's the classic that it is. And 4 years ago, we had like a love letter to haunted house movies with Insidious, which was the big reteaming of Lee Whannell and James Wan after Saw. Like they had Saw, and then they got big and famous, and then Dead Silence happened, and people were like, oh well, fuck this. But then Insidious happened, and people were won back over. Now, to throw this right out at you, yeah, upon Insidious's release, when I saw it the first time, I didn't really think much of it. It really didn't do anything for me. But if I remember correctly, to its credit, a lot of horror movies came out in 2011. Mm-hmm. And about the time this came out, it kind of just felt like another one in a long line, and it didn't really stand out. But watching it now, 4 years later, I rewatched it when the second one came out a couple of years ago, and then I watched it again recently, because I knew this video would be happening before too long. And yeah, it's better than I initially thought it was, but we can talk about some stuff. For starters, the opening scene is very attention-grabbing, where we have this very creepy establishing shot, and then we just kind of find this old woman ghost in this black veil, holding a candle, and we have no idea what the context of this ghost is. And the title comes up, and then we don't visit that for a while. We learn more about it later. One thing I really liked here about the old woman ghost is the reverse Mulholland Drive effect. Everybody will tell you one of the fucking scariest things they've ever seen in their life is the guy behind Winkies in Mulholland Drive. Yes. And the thing about that is, the thing that's kind of jarring is he's built up as the guy behind Winkies, but it's played by a woman. The old woman ghost in this movie is played by a guy. Mm-hmm. And there's something very jarring when you don't know that about characters. And you know, like, because when you see the guy behind Winkies or you see the old woman ghost in Insidious, you know there's something off, and that's what makes them really jarring when you see them. And that's not the thing that kind of comes to your mind, but it's a very clever thing that directors do to kind of, specifically David Lynch and James Wan, because we all know I'm a massive James Wan fan. I don't want to... Yeah. Let's see if I can go the entire Insidious review without praising the fuck out of The Conjuring. Just once. Let's find out. Okay, here we go. Okay. And yes, if you weren't sure that this is a James Wan movie, obviously, in Patrick Wilson's classroom in the background, you can see the puppet drawn on the board. Yep. This movie likes to take an interesting approach here, where, as the tagline will tell you, this movie turns the genre on its head immediately, to give it credit. If there's one thing you can't accuse this movie of, it's being cliche.
That's true.
That's one thing you can
I'll
say.
give them that.
Because here's what happens. You watch a haunted house movie over and over and over again, and you keep saying the same thing. Why don't they just move out? So, that's exactly what happens. They move into a new house, they start getting terrorized by ghosts, so they move the fuck out, and they go to a new house. And the issue is that the house is not the one that's haunted, and that's why it's still following them. And yeah, it is, the whole thing is handled really well. There are a lot of really, really effective scare scenes in it. Now, the issue here is it's very, very reliant on the jump scare factor, but, you know, there are things you can do. It's cheap as shit, and it's so, so rare, but there are very occasional moments where you can earn a jump scare.
Yeah.
I'm gonna divert just a second to talk about, my horror fans out there surely know what I'm talking about with The Exorcist 3. The Exorcist 3 has a very notorious scene where The Exorcist 3 has one jump scare scene in it, and they work 4 minutes to earn it. It is a 4-minute build-up scene, and they keep doing just tiny little things in the scene to keep, you know, putting you on edge, and then at ease, and then back on edge, and just taking you back and forth until finally, when you're least expecting it, the big scare happens. Here, sometimes they do it right, but others, let me point out, this is done a couple of times, and it works really well, and I really wish horror movies knew more about this. James Wan knows what the fuck he's doing. Because there's one scene, before I even saw the movie the first time, I heard about this scene a lot. Because it just really, really threw people. Because it's scaring people done well, and at this point in time, people weren't used to seeing that.
No.
Obviously, if you've seen the movie, you know I'm talking about the crib scene, where Rose Byrne walks into the room, and the dude is standing behind the crib, staring out. The ghost is. But there's nothing to indicate that he's there. You're just seeing him. And for a while, you have to kind of look to see him, too. But there's no score. There's no immediate realization that he's there. We just have this image of him standing by the crib, and the camera just lingers on it silently. And you're just kind of looking. And then after enough, he gives you just enough time to look before Rose Byrne screams. It gives you just enough time to be able to see what exactly you're looking at, and you think, "Oh my Jesus Christ!" That's really good. When you can pull that off, that's really great. And there's another scene later with the dancing kid that the first time we hear tips of the tools. It's so well done that you actually, like, for me, I don't know about other people. The first time, you almost have to rewind to make sure you saw it. Because it's this little kid, which we'll get to in a second, in, like, old-fashioned clothes and wearing a hat. And Rose Byrne's walking through the house in a long, shining type shot. And she's, like, putting the laundry down or whatever. And he's just standing there staring at the wall. And she doesn't see him. She just passes by. And he just goes by like that. There's nothing else in the movie that indicates he's there unless you happen to see him over there. That shit's wicked. That's a really cool way to do it. And I love the way that scene. Well, actually, I've got to back up before I want to talk more about that scene. But there's that, and then there's the really effective, where the first hauntings are taking place. There's the really effective scene with the long-haired guy, where he's walking back and forth outside the window, which is creepy enough. And then suddenly, when he goes to walk back, he's inside the room, just like that. Stuff like that works really well. And the thing that I really like about it is, generally throughout the movie, you kind of have, you know, a big scare scene and then pause, and then big scare scene and pause, and so on. and then you get all crazy and shit at the end. The thing that I really like about this movie is the really, really relentlessly crazy shit is right in the middle. There is a point where we have, backstory and character development, and everybody here is nice and lovely, and we like them. We don't want them to be haunted because they're too nice and cool, and Rose Byrne and her adorable little monkey pajamas. All of that. But then, right in the middle here, it just gets really, really relentless, but in a good way. It doesn't feel like they're really just constantly beating you with it, because you have to have them getting haunted, and then you have them moving into the house, and the hauntings continue. There's pretty much no break. They kind of take a small break to introduce Barbara Hershey's character, but for the most part, the scare scenes are relentless for a long time there. Because you have all that stuff I just talked about with the guy behind the crib, and then the long-haired guy coming in suddenly through the window, the bloody handprint, and then they move out, and you're like, oh, okay, good, everything's safe now. But because obviously we know the haunting has already started, there's no breather there where you have to wait for it to build up again. It's using what it's already built up, and it's still going on. As soon as they move into the house, the hauntings are still going on. There's no time to breathe. And there's this really brilliantly done scene. I was talking about with the kid in the hat with the record player. And there's this really brilliant scare where she sees the kid dancing in the window, and then he disappears, and she's going through the house and she's looking around, because at this point she still thinks she might just be crazy and hallucinating. But then she starts looking for him, and there's a big cabinet and then something underneath and shoes sticking out, so it's like clearly he's under the cabinet. So just as she goes to look under the cabinet, he breaks out of the cabinet. And it's not a kid, it's a freaky looking little person that laughs and runs away. The actor that plays him is, I think his name was Ben Wolf. He actually died earlier this year.
Yeah, the guy from American Horror Story.
Yeah. He's actually uncredited in this, which is weird. See, that's another thing where it's kind of... It's not, as far as casting somebody, it's not quite what you think it is, and that makes it creepier. Like just how the old woman's not actually a woman, the child's not actually a child.
Like Orphan.
Huh?
Like Orphan.
Yeah, spoilers. And I'm sure people know what Orphan is.
I'm sure everybody's seen Orphan. Anybody watching this video has probably seen Orphan before.
Yeah, so all of that is really, really great and everything. However, there's... I think a lot of people agree. This movie working abstract. Like, seeing the crazy shit and we don't know what the fuck its purpose is really creepy. Like I always say, that's what makes The Shining so scary. I don't know if people think about it, but the fact that nobody knows what the fuck is going on in The Shining and it's never been explained makes The Shining what it is. Here, that's what the first half of the movie is. But then it takes that turn where you gotta bring in the paranormal experts. And that's generally where paranormal movies start to lose themselves, when you bring in the paranormal experts. Unless you got Beatrice Straight and Zelda Rubinstein, and you're doing it really, really well, and that just makes the movie even better. That can make it work. That's why Poltergeist is awesome. Here, it kind of... I mean, Lin Shaye is awesome. I really love Lin Shaye in this movie. I love this character, even when she's in the sequel. And I like that she's going to be a big part of the third one, too. That gives me a little hope. I like seeing her as this character. She makes it really work. But you also have Tucker and Specs. Tucker and Specs are kind of supposed to be comedy relief, but they're not really funny.
No.
And then and it's just... I don't know. The movie's just not what it was when we get to this part. And everything starts getting when they bring the further into it, because that's what you got to do. You got to make up your own terminology and worlds if you want to be, yes, absolutely do that because originality is great, but it's just, I don't know. This second half doesn't really, I don't know. Once Patrick Wilson goes into the further, I think they do some cool stuff with that. But this period here where we get all, they're doing the tech stuff and all that and trying to do comedy relief that's not working and there's kind of a redundancy there for a while. It kind of starts to lose itself. And there are points in this movie I should point out. The acting is fine for the most part. Like I said before, I think Patrick Wilson's a pretty underrated actor. And we all know that Rose Byrne is...
Weirdly enough, that's actually my home number calling.
Oh, that's weird.
No, it happens every once in a while.
Okay, anyway, before we lose our audience. Rose Byrne is a very talented actress. She's really breaking out. Everybody loves Rose Byrne now. But if we're being totally honest, she's really fucking uneven in this movie.
Yeah.
When she doesn't have to say anything, I know that sounds like an insult, but I mean, like, when she has to emote being scared when the scare scenes are happening, those scenes are really good. But then, like, immediately after, you have to have a scene where she's trying to explain what she saw and how scared she is. And it's really, I don't know what she's going for, but or what, Juan was directing her towards, or whoever's fault it is, but, those scenes like that, she's really not very convincing, and it's really weird, because you have these scenes that are so well acted, and she's seriously, genuinely scared, you can tell, and then in the next scene, she's just like, I was so scared, man, just... Things are frightening. I think we should get out of here, man. This is just not working out. It's like, is this the same actress that was getting scared and shit earlier? I don't know. But and it's like that throughout. Her line deliveries can be really off and weird and not in tone with the rest of her performance. But there's that. But then we have the introduction of the character everybody likes to talk about in this movie, who is lovingly referred to by fans as two different things. The most popular name he goes by is Lipstick Face. Mm-hmm. Or people just say the Darth Maul Ghost.
A lot of my friends use both.
Who is played by the composer of the movie, by the way.
Yep.
And we should compliment him real quick, because the score for this movie is pretty awesome. It's one of those scores where it's kind of like... I was talking about the score with Poltergeist earlier. This score is more like... It's not so much like spine tingling, but it's like the score is like walking up your back. And it works really well, especially when we're just lingering on dark hallways and we don't know what the fuck's down there. Stuff like that. So yes, and I do like, there's some good scenes there. Like, the scene is really great and really effective. When they could have done like a cheap thing here, like I know everybody loves the jump scare where Lipstick Face is suddenly behind Patrick Wilson's head. What I really love, and the scene that really is freaky to me, is when it's Specs' job to draw what Lin Shaye's character sees, and she sees Lipstick Face on the ceiling through the ceiling fan, and she's explaining rapidly to Specs what he looks like, and he's drawing him, and we see that it's Lipstick Face. But when she's looking up and describing what she sees, all we see is darkness. We don't see anything. And that's a really great scene. And then, like I said, I do think when T goes inside the further, I think that's an interesting idea. And there's some really freaky looking, memorable imagery in there. Like, I think the Doll Girls is what they're referred to as, the family where it's like the three of them are dead on a couch, and then one's like holding a shotgun and smiling, and shit like that. The old lady ghost finally comes back, which we learned was the one that was haunting Patrick Wilson as a kid. Yeah, it loses a lot of luster in kind of explaining what all's going down, and it kind of, it could have been more well handled once the paranormal expert stuff kind of came in, but, it's fine. There are a lot of things that could have made it better. Like this could have been something absolutely great. This totally could have been something that was on par with Poltergeist, and The Shining, even while we're talking about like abstract horror. But it's fine. The stuff that's really good is really good, and kind of makes up for the stuff that's not so much. But it would have been great if the whole movie was like that. But for now, we just kind of have to say it's nice that the good stuff is good. So, do I need to say which? Yeah, I think that's about all we have here.
I'm pretty sure, I'm not looking at the schedule right now because it's not in front of me, because the way we film, it's impossible to do without creating another glare. But I'm pretty sure we're sticking with Spielberg next week, too. Unless I got the schedule mixed up.
I don't remember.
If we are, then we have an epic Spielberg battle coming up.
I'll remember what it is eventually.
You know exactly what it is, but I don't know if it's this week or next week. It's June now, so I mean, come on.
Oh yeah.
It would be this week because next week is the Megaverses.
Maybe.
No, we'll be fine. I got a way around this.
Okay, we're done here.
That being said, continue to watch the other segments here on Pop. Hopefully you enjoyed AJ's movie reviews over the weekend and Gaming with Ash. Horror Nights videos coming very soon, and if you would like wrestling, a lot of wrestling content coming. Elimination Chamber podcast tonight at 11, and Raw podcast at 11:30 midnight. We'll get started once the Stone Cold podcast with Paul Heyman's over. And NXT and Impact, as well as Sip and Snack, and another week of Pop content. So thank you guys and girls out there for watching Versus. AJ, any parting words?